not. So the last section that we're going to do here in this feast, the last thing we're going to feast on, is doing a little bit of co-creation. So in this sense, we're abiding by the principle that you all are not here just to listen to us talk, but to actually engage in a conversation. There's value in every person that attends the meeting, and you're not just digesters of information, but you're also co-creators with us. So for this last step, we would like to put the prompt out for you all of what ideas do you have to make your digital session more engaging? And then as we go, I will go ahead and capture these ideas. So I put a couple in here already based on the conversation, not to overwhelm the canvas, but just to get us started. So Chris, earlier you mentioned the exiting on a nice note and leaving space for that at the end. Kate and Patty, you just opened up the conversation of getting others to draw. So I want to pass this back to you all of what other ways can we make digital sessions even more engaging? And feel free just to unmute yourself. There's not too many of us here, so we can.
I don't know how to say this, but it's kind of what Tom was echoing and Kate about not having to be all the features all the time. Just because we can video doesn't mean we should. Sort of, I don't know, judicious use of the technology. I don't know.
Absolutely.
One of the things Susan and I talked about previously was when a session is engaging via conversation, right? When it's just one person talking at you and not really engaging the group, but how do you make your sessions a dialogue? How do you make sure that you're calling on people, right? So that folks are having to pay attention and be present. I don't know. I think that dialogue is really, really important. You know, this is a great example. You know, just a bunch of us on this call had questions and, you know, comments to add to the conversation, and it wasn't just one or two people talking at us the whole time.
Right, and to kind of piggyback off of what Tom is saying, you guys know I'm planning a conference, not just a meeting, so it's kind of top of mind for me. Some things that we're planning on doing to engage our audience is to have them prepared kind of to be a working group instead of just listening to an expert. So I think we're going to have to get creative with the platform, but asking people ahead of time, like, hey, come to this ready to put your ideas out there.
So this is Patty. One thing I'd like to add that I've been using, I'd say over the last 2 years and recently used on Monday with 80 people is Mentimeter. And I love Mentimeter as a way to engage people with hearing all their voices and all the different ways that you can use Mentimeter. So you can get word clouds, you can do opening questions, you can do quiz. Actually, we just did a pub quiz with Helene, and that was a lot of fun. So you can use it for a lot of ways to engage and still hear people's ideas. And you might not have heard of it, but just go check it out.
Can you spell that for me?
Mentimeter. Mentimeter.
Thank you.
Sort of like the online polls that you use, except on steroids.
Yeah.
Right.
It's great. It's great.
So I'm not sure how to say this, and this will sound probably too brutal, but intentionality, essentially, like, are we having meetings just to have meetings? Or is there a great intention driving them? And I think there's a really obvious difference when you're in those meetings. I could tell some bad stories, but I won't. And I just think, to echo other people's points, maybe a Zoom call isn't what you need. Maybe some preparation is, and definitely a very clear sense of why we're having it and why everyone involved is there. Not just to be obligatory, not just because we pivoted from a physical workplace to this one, but like, really and truly, why are we here?
Absolutely. And this just inspired something. Who wrote text with their mouse?
I did. Mentimeter is actually a texting tool, so people can, they basically text a number and the poll comes up on the screen. So I wanted y'all to know it was like a texting feature. However, my
That's
handwriting is
awesome.
not as good as whoever is actually.
So, well, just to a little bit of tech nerdery. So I'm using an iPad Pro and Procreate, and I'm projecting my canvas from, so if you can still see my video, I've got my tablet here, and I'm using a Apple Pencil on it.
Nice.
So that's why it's very different. But I would encourage anyone who wants to draw some things on top of this canvas using the annotate, feel free, even if you just have a mouse and want to write it, feel free to contribute, or you can add hearts, you can add shapes, whatever you want to co-create this canvas with us.
Oh, that's cool.
But yes, great point, Lily, about the intentionality.
And that's a really helpful tip. She just talked about having a pen. So you can do it on an iPad. You can do it on a, there's a, I forget what they're called, but the drawing surface that graphic artists use so that you can draw using a pen.
Wacom.
There's Wacom. So those are great, because I don't have a whiteboard behind me, but those are great tools to figure out a way to use a pen so that you can have like a whiteboard experience.
Nothing wrong with a plain old whiteboard.
Nope. And you can also type on this, so feel free to do that. What else? What else can we add to this? If this can be a memory for you of what we talked about and some of the ideas.
So what I've been doing for some of my meetings, if it's going to be longer than say 30 minutes, is I will schedule in icebreaker time or catch-up time, depending on whether or not I know the person. And it's help get people out of panic survival mode and into more creative, hey, we're problem solving, we have time to react. Let's actually work on solutions and not just grabbing at straws. Because it kind of breaks that seriousness that people come in with, and it's like, it's helped.
Absolutely.
It's something that, so I'm thinking about what Carla just said and what Chris has said and the work that Susan does to connect. And I'm thinking the question that I've got in my head is, how do we create a sense of like expansive breath during we have this drive on the clock and this schedule on the clock, and it seems like the technology, for me, it focuses me more on the task. And how do we create that sense of expansion and that sense of that pause, that sense of breath? If that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think there, just to build on that, Kate, too, there is a lot of power in the pause. And we commonly do that in in-person sessions, but we often forget about it in the digital world because everything's moving so fast. And that's the expectation with digital, is that things move faster. But I got into a conversation yesterday with a colleague about, as a facilitator, sometimes your role is just to hold a space for people to engage and talk. And when you do that in the digital world, it is really your role to give people a digital space, to set up a digital room, to give people an ability to engage in a conversation. So you're setting up a space differently when you're working digitally, but still it is about holding that space. And in holding that space, in person, you would add in those elements of the pause and breathing and reassessing where you are. So I think that's a beautiful point to move to digital as well.
Well, and I think pacing, right? So the facilitator manages the pace.
Absolutely. So I'm seeing a couple more on here. We've got Google Docs, screen sharing, Mural, using stickies. If you're not familiar with Mural, it's basically Post-it notes digitally. There are more tech tools like mind mapping. You can also use those between meetings. Chris loves the pause. Let's see what else we have in here. Someone tell me about the intro activity, the stamp on location.
That was mine. This is Helene. I had a seminar that I was presenting, and there were participants from all over the country and in Canada. So as an opening activity, both as an icebreaker and also a way for them to be introduced to the Annotate tool, because a lot of people on this seminar had never used a Zoom Annotate tool. When they entered, they had to go into Annotate and put a little stamp on their location. So as an icebreaker, everybody can see where we're coming from. So we had California and New York and Ottawa. And it was a nice way to start chatting, because then they opened up the chat box and said, hey, who's in Ohio? I'm only 3 hours away from you. So that was a nice little opening. And I didn't have to worry about tech later on for the quote unquote real activity, because they had already used the annotation tool.
That's awesome. And Helene, what group did you say this was with?
This was a seminar company who hired me to present to their membership. It's called IMS, the Institute for Management Studies. And as long as I'm unmuted, I wanted to piggyback on what you, Abby, and also Kate were talking about, the pause with my sessions, because they're around mind management. A lot of folks who attend have never slowed down before and have never experienced quiet before. So during these virtual sessions, I've had as long as a 7-minute silent period where people were capturing their thoughts. They were just on their own. They didn't have kids in the background. And a lot of them have said, I have not sat still and just thought that way for so long. So we don't have to be on verbally and visually the whole time. Sometimes silence is what people need as well.
What? Time to actually think about what we're doing? That's crazy talk.
I know. Call me insane.
Well, that's just it. The things that, I'm all about the fast pace. We got a lot to do. We got to get in. We got to get out. But I'm also among the brain of the whatever words. I'm not good with them. The mind that, I want to get in and really sit down and focus and really think about it, so we don't have to come back and do this again. So yeah, having that time to feel like it's okay to think and not feel rushed, I think is priceless.
Absolutely. So Susan, I will pass this back to you to close us up for this. And thank you everyone for your contributions. It's been really fun to co-create this visual with you. So I'm going to take a quick screenshot here of this so I can make sure I capture the annotations as well.